Hello and welcome to the Laundromat Millionaire Show. Today's episode will be very interesting. We've all seen on YouTube and TikToks and everything, people just going around collecting money, making the laundromat business look like an easy cash cow.
It runs itself, right? Isn't that what they always say, Carla?
Yeah. You just go around, you fill up your bucket full of money, take it to the bank. Other than that, you don't have to do anything and your laundromat's successful. We're going to talk about that today. Is that really the case? Is that even possibly the case?
Yep. We're going to get into it right now. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. I'm here with my gorgeous wife, Carla, and we are going to talk about something that has been debatable, argumentative, depending on how you want to look at it in the industry for, I would guess, probably 70 years, but at least the 15 years we've been around or so, and that is the laundromat business a passive business? But hold on a second. Before you veterans roll your eyes and turn off your computers or turn off your podcast, hear us out, because we want to talk about this in a little bit different context. Don't just quickly, flippantly say, no, it's not, because there's actually some context. And what I like to say is, what is it, Carla?
It depends.
It depends, because we will tell you that we are passive business owners at this point in our journey. So we want to talk about a little bit of what that looks like. Is the business passive? Are we passive? How did we do that? And by the way, I know other people that are passive that have built different types of businesses than we have in the laundromat industry too. So that's really what we want to dive into. The first thing is, let's just set the stage, okay? Let's get a formal definition. I'm not sure the IRS gets to be the be-all, end-all that they want to be, but let's use their definition of what a passive business is. The IRS says, a passive business is a business in which the party or taxpayer did not materially participate in the business during the tax year. The IRS defines material participation as involvement in the activity of the business on a regular, continuous, and substantial basis.
Okay, so to put that in layman's terms, because that was very wordy, is a passive business is one that you don't have to actively participate in regularly.
Yep.
Okay, so it doesn't mean you never participate, but you don't regularly or substantially participate in the operations.
And by the way, it also doesn't say that somebody else doesn't do that. It's talking about you as an individual. If you are the owner of the business, it's talking about you in that context. If there's a partnership, it's talking about the partnership. And each member of a partnership could have a different role within that partnership. So those are some of the things we want to talk about today, because we have our business model, which we're not the only ones doing this. There are others that operate businesses in different ways. And then there are partnerships out there, which we're not a partnership, but there are partnerships out there where some members of the partnership could be passive owners, and we want to talk about what that looks like. And the main reason we want to do this isn't really to argue or debate. Really what we want to do is just bring information. We don't want everybody in the industry just casually and flippantly always saying, no, that's silly, it's not a passive business, move on with your life, you got to work yourself 60 hours a week if you own a laundromat. And there are some people that believe that, and we are here to tell you that that is 100% absolutely not true.
I think, too, it's important to say, I know the standard answer when people say, is this a passive business? No, it's not. I think they're looking at, is it a passive business like no one has to work in the laundromat? And we've all seen evidence of that in our communities or places we've visited. You know, that's basically what creates the zombie mat. I know here in our Cincinnati, one of our competitors opened this beautiful store, and it was run passively. You never saw an owner. There wasn't even a number for an owner in this store. I don't even know. I guess they collected at some point, but they were basically all card ran. So there weren't a whole lot of coins. They maybe had someone that occasionally came and cleaned it, but honestly, it didn't even look like that. And this beautiful new store, we kept hearing from people, oh, I'll never go there because there was no owner there. There was no person there. It was not being kept up. It was not being maintained. And that brand new, beautiful store is now a zombie mat. And it's not even that old yet.
Yeah. And to give you a little context there, so we have 4 laundromats on the east side of Cincinnati. They're all kind of in a triangle on the east side of Cincinnati. And this store, we've been in business since 2009, 2010 for our first store, but we've owned the 4 stores that we have now, plus our new store in Amelia for a total of 7 years that we've owned all 4 of the stores. And I think it was probably about a year or 2 after we bought our 4th store that it was actually a spec store. This distributor decided to build it. He was trying to get a footprint in Cincinnati. Didn't really have much business in Cincinnati. So they built a spec store right in the middle of our 4 stores. And I tell you what, they did a lot of things right. They really did. They put good equipment in there. They had decent wide aisles. They had some big, large capacity equipment in there. Good seating, folding tables, not so much. They are unattended, but the location is actually a really good location. It's on a very busy road. Once again, they stayed far enough away from our 4 stores where they could capture some of the market. And the ironic thing is they've been in business now for about 3.5 years, and they're still running dollar double loaders, 20-pound machines. They started out as an intro price, and 3.5 years later, they're still running $1 for 20-pound machines and have been for 3.5 years. And they've been doing it that whole time to try to capture market share. And all 4 of our stores in the meantime are doing better than ever before. Yeah. So while they did make a short-term chink in our armor, it really only lasted about 3 or 4 months. We got all of our customers back, and then we continue to grow. And Carla's right. Now that store is basically, it's got 3-year-old equipment, 3-year-old build-out and infrastructure, but it's basically a zombie mat. It's a complete and utter dump. So anyway, here's what we want to do. By definition, can a laundromat business be passive? The answer is unequivocally yes, it can for some people. That's the key, okay? That's the key to keep it in context here, is the business itself is not a passive business, as we mentioned. So let's go through a few examples that I've witnessed and friends that I know that are in the industry. Okay, here's one example. 3 partners invest to open a laundromat. 2 of them are silent or passive investors, and the 3rd is deemed the operating partner. For the first 2 partners, the business is a passive business. They are passive owners.
They're basically investors.
Not for the 3rd. That's correct. And
That's what allows them to be passive.
Right. And by the way, I know these individuals. I actually know several groups of them. And that doesn't mean they don't do anything in the business. Most of the ones that I know have either weekly, biweekly, or monthly leadership meetings with the other partners in the business. And basically what happens is the operating partner, which is the one that's not passive, actively running the business, reports back on either a weekly, biweekly, or monthly basis to let the other 2 partners know how their investment is doing. So 2 of the partners in this 3-partner business are passive business owners. But of course, the laundromat itself, the business, is not passive. Somebody has to run the business.
So if you're wanting to be a passive owner, get other people that want to work in the business, or at least one other person wants to work in the business, and be a silent partner or investor in it.
Yeah, there are plenty of situations. So there's even some bigger groups out there that do investment structures and things like that, where you can do things like that. So here's another example of how a laundromat might be structured or run. An individual buys a laundromat and runs it him or herself. They have a few attendants, but they are the manager. They fix the equipment. They handle payroll, the hiring, the firing. Obviously, this person would not be a passive business owner. And we are aware this is probably the most common way to purchase and own and run a laundromat, which is why people get so worked up about it. It is common, but the first example exists probably a lot more than people think it does.
Yeah. Well, an example too, I mean, that's how we started.
Yep, 100%.
And I think that's how a lot of people have to start is because, from the get-go, you can't always afford, to have people do the work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we worked our butts off for 5 to 7 years and slowly migrated into being passive business owners now. So here's a 3rd example. This is kind of what we categorize ourselves at today, and this episode is being released in 2022 if you're watching this in the future. So an individual, or in this case, a married couple, buys a laundromat, runs it for 3 years. They are not passive owners at that point. But by year 4, they build up an amazing team, and they are mostly removed from the day-to-day operations of the business. By definition, by the IRS's definition, they are a passive laundromat owner. Now, once again, the business is not passive, but they are passive business owners. Now, in our case, it wasn't 3 years. It was closer to about 5 years. But that's an example. of a situation. So look, here's the thing. Ultimately, the answer is, mostly semantics is what a lot of people would say, which is why can people continue to debate this subject. Is the laundromat business itself, is the business a passive business? No, it's not. But we also talk about all the time, Carla, about how the business is a flexible business. So once again, everything's relative. When we compare that to other businesses, other industries, it is a relatively flexible business.
Yeah.
We know people that own, multiple rental properties and things like they have a real estate, quote unquote, empire. They have restaurants. They have Great Clips franchises, all different things like that. Those businesses are not near as passive as the laundromat business is. They're not, let me rephrase that. They're not near as flexible as that business is. Now, could they run them passively? They could. It's just going to require more of their operations team. And also in the laundromat business, it depends on how sophisticated your business is. So we've obviously grown a pretty sophisticated, what we call full service laundry center at this point. There's nothing better than free. Ever heard that before? Well, it's not true. You know what your laundromat customers like even better than free? It's fast. That's right. They want to save time more than they want to save money in most cases. They want to get in and out of your laundromat as fast as possible, and they'll pay more for that experience. We're proof of that here in Cincinnati. That's why we added HM Company drain troughs into our newest store in Cincinnati. While they may never know why, your customers will love that your washers all drain better and faster than with old school drain pipes. As if that wasn't enough, every HM drain trough is made in the USA, so they ship in only a few weeks and everyone is custom made just for you and your project. If you want to provide your customers with a top of the industry experience in your store, then contact your distributor to order your HM Company drain trough today or visit draintroughs.com.
Well, and the flexibility is honestly what drew you to the laundromat industry to begin with.
100%.
When we were looking for a business to get into, when Dave was looking for a business to invest in, we were both working full time, had kids. So we needed a business that could be flexible, that could basically work around our work schedules. And that's what a laundromat offered. In the beginning, we both worked normal 9-to-5 jobs every day, but then in the evenings and before work, that's when you would go to the laundromat and I took care of the kids. So it was that flexibility. It wasn't that it could be passive and he didn't have to go to the laundromat. It was he could go to the laundromat before and after his regular job. So the hours he chose to work were flexible.
Yeah, so what we like to always tell people at the laundromat business is the laundromat business has work that needs to be done by an operator, an operations team, depending on what type of a model you build and create. But when it's done, for the most part, is really determined by you. And I'm aware there are exceptions and there are emergencies. We all know those situations. But for the most part, barring an emergency, if you have 8 20-pound washers and one is broken down, you put an out-of-order sticker on it and people can use the other 7. Now, obviously, not most of us top operators in the industry don't want to leave them like that for very long. But you could wait till Monday. You could wait till Friday. You could wait till your service guy comes out. It does give you that flexibility where if you own a pizza shop and you have a pizza oven and the pizza oven goes down, you're fixing it right here, right now, or you're closing down. That's one of the benefits of having all those independent workers that we call them, all the machines, the washers and dryers that we have. So here's one of the things we want to stress to people. There's a lot of information out there, on the internet, the evil internet, as we always talk about. There's a lot of information out there that a laundromat runs itself. That's silly. Guys, it's silly. I don't know why people put information like that out there, but we really wanted to use this episode to change the conversation to the business does require an operator. The flexibility of the type of business you run gives flexibility to the operator. And then we just want to share our story real quick, just a very high level of how we became or how we evolved from being a non-passive owner, active owner, I guess is what you would call it, active operator, to a fully passive owner, even though our business model is more complicated and sophisticated now than ever before. So before I jump into this, one other thing I want to point out to everyone is I also hear all the time, I own an individual laundromat or 2 or 3, but I don't want to own a bigger chain, or I don't want to add wash, dry, fold, or have managers or employees or do pickup and delivery because I don't want to work that hard, is what I hear all the time. And the one thing I want to stress to people as I kind of to share this real quick story of how we evolved through the business models, is we work less now than we've ever worked. But yet our multi-million-dollar operation here in Cincinnati is more complex and sophisticated than ever before. So once again, if you don't want to do pickup and delivery, that's fine. If you don't want to do wash, dry, fold, that's fine. If you don't want to have managers, if you don't want to have multi-store chain, all those things are fine. They're your choice, but don't believe for a second that you can't build a more sophisticated, complicated business model that requires less of you than a simplistic business model, because we are also living, breathing examples of that.
I will say, though, it doesn't eventually require less of you.
Sure, 100%.
Because I will say, like, when we first started Wash, Dry, Fold, we were very hands-on.
Yep.
When we first started Pickup and Delivery, those first couple years, we were very hands-on. But once you establish those procedures and get the management team in place and everything like that to do those extra jobs, it becomes much easier to step back. But initially, it is more intense.
Definitely. And let's point this out too, Carla. It's the reason that I do coaching nowadays. It's the reason I do one-on-one coaching. It's the reason we created our pickup and delivery workshops. Part of why we want to do those things and give back and teach in the industry is because we want people to understand. I mean, we're aware that we're rare. I mean, we're not the only people that are doing this, by the way, but we are aware that we are definitely a rare operating model in the industry. And so one of our passions, many passions, but one of them is to show and teach the industry how we've done what we've done. And we can do that through coaching. I like to think.
Help them do it more quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
Where we were figuring it out and made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Our goal is to help people get where we are a lot quicker without the mistakes.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so here's the super high-level story here, our story. So from 2009 to 2014, I was an active owner, very active. In fact, I've even told people, if you've checked out my book, which you can get on my website, if you've checked out my book, it actually walks you through how basically those first 4 or 5 years, I worked anywhere from 90 to 100 hours a week. That was a full-time job, that was a commute, and that was working in my stores to build them up to not even what they are today, but just to get them out of the dumps, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, and our first 2 podcasts also kind of go through our story and all of that.
They definitely do. So if you haven't checked those out, go check those out, and we'll link those down in the show notes too. So in 2015, I became a passive owner. Now, Carla was still a school teacher, okay? So I quit my job in 2014, 2015, and I became a passive owner at that point. Now, in 2016, we launched our pickup and delivery business, and I very quickly became very active in that new business, but I remained a passive in the retail business. And what I want to share with you is during that window, during that time frame, we hired a manager. We eventually hired a second manager. We had 4 stores before we launched pickup and delivery. We had a general manager and 2 store managers that ran the 4 stores. So we had a store manager that ran each of the 2 stores, about split their time, and then a general manager that was over them. And that was how our team was run when I was a passive owner before we launched pickup and delivery. When we launched pickup and delivery, we didn't obviously know everything we know now. It was honestly kind of a train wreck for a couple of years. And so me and that management team I just described to you worked tirelessly trying to crack the code to pick up and delivery and figure out that model, build the team, build a driving, logistics manager is what we call them, build a 3rd shift production crew, figure out compensation plans, all the things that we now teach and train in our coaching and in our pickup and delivery workshop. So it fully became passive in 2019. So our delivery business at that point, plus our 4 retail stores, all became passive in roughly 2019 after we cracked the code to pick up and delivery. And it wasn't a light switch. It didn't happen overnight. It was kind of an evolution over probably about a year or so. We kind of cracked the code, figured it out, and slowly but surely I started to back out of that, what I call that other business, meaning the pickup and delivery business. So where do we sit today in 2022 and beyond? In 2022, we now have a team of store attendants. We have a team of laundry processors. A few work 2nd shift, most work 3rd shift. We have a team of delivery drivers. We have a logistics manager. Excuse me, on our third shift crew, we also have third shift supervisors. So 2 of our laundry processors are actually working supervisors. They're in charge of the third shift crew. We have store managers in each store, and then we have what we call a leadership team of 3 people, and that is 2 assistant GMs and then our general manager. And that leadership team of 3 people, that's the leadership team that runs and operates our business on a day-to-day and month-to-month basis. And basically what I do now, the only thing I really do active in the business nowadays, for as far as operations are concerned, is I have a weekly leadership meeting with those 3 individuals, and we talk about those things. Now, we're all 4 local here, so we typically just do it at one of our stores, at our corporate office, or sometimes at lunch or something like that. But I could be out of town and do that over Zoom or something like that. So it just depends on how you want to build a business. Now, Carla, as you all know, she left her teaching job recently. She spends a few hours a week working on bookkeeping. I spend a few hours a week meeting with the leadership team, and that's it.
That's really all we do for the laundromats.
Yep,
The rest of our
exactly right.
time is spent now on
Doing this.
doing
podcasts,
helping other people.
writing books, launching conferences, putting together workshops, which is a separate business. Laundromat Millionaire business is a separate business from our retail stores and our pickup and delivery business. And that's what I was referring to us being so passionate about. So once again, back to the IRS definition, these businesses are now passive businesses for us. Now, the businesses didn't change. We are just passive owners, if that makes sense.
Our business is definitely not passive. People are working really hard.
And some of our
businesses.
some of our leadership team watches these podcasts, and they're smiling right now because those are really rock star, awesome people who work their tails off.
Yeah.
So there's an important reminder here. While our businesses are run and structured to allow us to currently be passive owners, the thing we need to always, always, always remember is that when you are the ultimate owner of a business, that could change at any point. And I know this episode's going a little bit long, but I'll give you a really quick example. COVID. So COVID happened. We have an amazing team. They were amazing, but we weren't able to, especially at the beginning of what I call the heat of COVID, when everybody was not, nobody knew if we were going to die or what was going to happen. A good portion of our team, including our management team, were scared to leave their house and go to work. And there was probably a couple months where more than one time, me and Carla would jump in the car and we'd drive from this store and clean it and then lock up, and then we drive to this store and clean it, where we normally have attendants and managers. But we basically told them, hey, if you're afraid for your life, by all means, stay home. Yeah. But we had to do what we had to do to run our businesses. So I think the important thing to remember is whether you're a member of a partnership where 2 partners are passive and one is the operating partner. I mean, what would those 2 passive partners do if their operating partner died, for example, or all of a sudden decided he quit, he's out? Even though he has equity in the business, he probably wouldn't do that. But what if they did do that? What if they got disabled or, got cancer and got really sick or something like that? The important thing to remember is when you're a business owner, you're always a business owner. And you can build an amazing team and things like that. Our leadership team, if they all resigned, retired, or quit at the same time, then we would be forced right back into being active owners once again. Obviously, it's something I've done, so I could jump right back into it. Carla she'd probably go back to teaching. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, when you own the business, you also have to be aware of that. But the thing I also want to point out to you is it's part of our strategy behind building a leadership team versus an individual that's an operating partner or an operations manager. And of course, our team wasn't always this way. But this goes back to what I tell people. This is a flexible business, not a passive business. But no matter how you build your leadership team, always strive to be better tomorrow than you are yesterday. So if you have 2 passive owners and then you have an operating partner, are you building a leadership team under them where if the operating partner were to step away for some reason, is there an operations team under them, or are they running the whole business? Maybe you have one general manager like we had for many, many years. I used to always say, okay, I call it the bus test, which some people tell me is morbid, but I say, what would happen if I got up today and got hit by a bus? What would happen to my business? And then I pass that right on down the line. I say, what would happen to Carla? If we got up this morning and she got hit by a bus, what would happen to Marlene, our general manager? And so that's what we've built in, what we call redundancies in our operations, in our leadership team, in our management team, and we cross-train them. So if one of our store managers quits, a member of our leadership team could very easily slide in and start running that store the very next day. That's when you know you have a bulletproof business. But full disclosure, I'm 46 years old. It's 2022. And our business will not look like it looks right now in 4 or 5 years. I'm not sure what it will look like, but we're going to continue to build our operations to be as bulletproof or as bust-proof as possible. Does that make sense? Yep. All right. Well, listen, we hope this brought you some value today. We know it was a little bit long-winded, but hopefully you hung in there with us. I'm sure a lot of your newbies did because you're probably very curious about this. Hopefully some of the veterans hung on because I think this is a little bit different conversation than a lot of veterans in the industry have. And what we want everybody to know is the options that are out there. And to be honest with you, there's different hybrids of those three. We're not suggesting it's just those three either. But anyway, hopefully that helps you all out. If nothing else, always look at your business through the lens of what if something happened to me? What if something happened to my most valuable people? What would happen to my business? And just build in those redundancies, build up those backups, because that's just going to make your team bigger and badder. But by the way, when you do that, if you ever decide to exit the business, it actually makes the business more valuable too. A lot of people don't know that. Okay. All right. So Dave and Carla Menz from Cincinnati, Ohio, we thank you for being with us today, and we will see you next time for another episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. Take care, everyone.
Bye.